Hello. In the book of Exodus, God tells the Israelites, "You have seen the Egyptians today, but you shall not see them again, ever." Later, in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses reminds Israel of that commandment. "The Lord has said to you, from now on, you will not return to Egypt." In this week's Torah portion, Tavo, the Israelites hear that commandment for the third time. You shall not see Egypt anymore. The message is clear. We are not to return to Egypt and live there. In time, this was codified into the 601st commandment of Judaism. You shall never again dwell permanently in the land of Egypt. A commandment that sadly I broke the moment I was born, since I hail from Egypt. Actually, in spite of this commandment, Jews have lived in Egypt and even flourished there since biblical times. But today, for the first time ever, Egypt is practically judenrein, free of Jews. I was one of the last Jews to leave. Egypt is very much in the news today, and has been since the revolution of January 2011, still underway 2.5 years later. Today, every pundit and his uncle is a self-styled expert on Egypt, and will give you an in-depth opinion about what's going on there and what it means. Me, I'm not a pundit. I'm only an uncle, many times over. But I was born and raised in Egypt until I was forced out in 1967, after the Six-Day War, when I was 18. So I may be able to give you some insights. God took the Jews out of Egypt 3,500 years ago, freeing them from slavery and sending them on to begin a new chapter in their march through history as a proud and free people. But what about the Egypt they left behind? Did it ever get free? No, never. To this day, it has always remained enslaved by masters, foreign and domestic. Are the Egyptians condemned to perpetual retribution for enslaving the Jews? Or has their time finally arrived to proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof, in the middle of the massive demonstrations we have been watching on TV for almost 3 years? First, why should we care what happens to Egypt? We're happy to be out of it. We're happy to be rid of it. But we are commanded to remember Egypt every single day. The Torah says, quote, "Remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt, all the days of your life," unquote. The Talmud reinforced this message. The Passover Haggadah adds that in every generation, every person must consider that he himself was personally rescued from Egypt. That's easy for me to say. The exodus from Egypt is highlighted in the Kiddush for every Shabbat and holiday eve. Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. Egypt is where we truly became a people, where we received the Torah. We're not allowed to keep Egypt out of our collective consciousness. We are linked to it by history and proximity, if nothing else. So what can we say about Egypt today? Egyptians have a long history of being passive, fearful. They are afraid to speak their mind. They may tell you in private what you want to hear, but in public, they will go with the flow, out of fear. You're never sure what they really think. They fear their leaders and the police states that keep these leaders in power. What has been happening in the streets of Egypt for 3 years is totally unprecedented in their 5,000-year recorded history. The people are demanding a voice in determining their future. They have already caused the army to depose 2 totalitarian rulers, Mubarak and Morsi, the first secular and the second Islamic, and have publicly reviled them to their faces with astonishing vehemence. This has never happened before. Let us briefly review the history of Egypt before we proceed. First, the pharaohs of ancient Egypt were in charge, all absolute rulers with absolute power over the people. The people, then as now, were mostly dirt-poor peasants. The pharaoh were backed by the priests, whose job was to scare the people into submission by threatening the wrath of the many false gods that were worshipped. Recorded history can be said to begin with the pharaoh Menes, who united Upper and Lower Egypt in 3000 BCE, 5,000 years ago. By the time Cleopatra ruled in the 1st century BCE, ancient Egypt was already moribund. It was conquered by Alexander, the so-called Great, in 331 BCE. He built the city of Alexandria in his name and image. The Greeks, or Ptolemies as they called themselves in Egypt, were the masters for 3 centuries. Then the Romans took over from them for about 4 centuries. When the Roman Empire split, the Byzantines took over Egypt in 395 and kept it for another 3 centuries. Then Islam was born. The foreign Arabs conquered Egypt in 639 and ruled it for 6 centuries, up to about the middle of the 13th century. The Egyptians of today are mostly the descendants of these invaders. The ancient Egyptians morphed into the Christian Copts and declined in proportion to become only about 10% of the population today. The Mamluks then took over Egypt in 1250 and held it for some 3 centuries. They were former slaves from Russia and the Caucasus who converted to Islam. They were followed by the Turks or Ottomans for another 3 centuries. Even Napoleon tried his hand at conquering Egypt. He came in 1798, but after 3 years gave up and withdrew, leaving a power vacuum. That vacuum was quickly filled in 1805 by Albanian commander by the name of Muhammad Ali. He managed to gain some autonomy from the Ottoman Empire and ruled Egypt ruthlessly as viceroy, along with his descendants, for a century and a half. His descendants ruled under the colorful names of Khedive, Sultan, and finally King. In 1882, some 13 years after the Suez Canal opened, the British invaded, ostensibly to protect that vital waterway and ensure the stability of the Egyptian dynasty. They became the de facto rulers for many decades. All this time, the poor Egyptian people watched their foreign masters helplessly, licking boots and trying to survive by being as servile as possible. Then the 1952 revolution came and brought Nasser to power. It was not a grassroots event. It was a bloodless palace coup. The army simply came and told the king, "Your time is up, get out." Nobody consulted the common people. As expected, they cheered Nasser with the same gusto as they cheered King Farouk a few years earlier. It's true that for the first time since the pharaohs, the Egyptians were now ruled by one of their own. But ruled is the right word. The new rulers proved to be every bit as totalitarian and oppressive as their foreign predecessors. Democracy was never part of their vocabulary. Maintaining themselves in power was their foremost concern. Nevertheless, human nature is such that if you're going to be ruled with an iron hand, better that it be by one of your own than by a foreigner. So the Egyptian people felt better in that regard. Most Egyptians are tolerant, good-natured, kind-hearted, and not fundamentally anti-Semitic. But their leaders and preachers frequently encourage anti-Semitism. There are 3 sources of anti-Semitism in Egypt: the Islamic fundamentalists, the intellectuals, and the Coptic Church. The Islamic fundamentalists have always opposed peace with Israel and have vowed to abrogate the 1979 peace treaty with Israel. They support terrorism and view Jews in the most outrageously negative of terms, which I will not repeat here. The intellectuals are whipping up antagonism towards Jews and Israel through the media. They know that if war comes, they can always get out of fighting on the battlefield by pulling the appropriate levers. They speak bravely of honor, as long as others do the fighting and the suffering and the dying. The government has always given them a free rein as a safety valve. And the Coptic Church is stuck in a medieval interpretation of Christianity from which the rest of official Christianity has been moving away. I remember shivers going down my spine when I heard the Coptic Pope on the radio in 1967, right before the Six-Day War, when war frenzy was whipping up the masses. He said, "The time has finally come when the Jews will pay and their sons will pay for the crucifixion of Christ." He spat out the word pay with great anger. To be sure, not all Copts are anti-Semitic, and some may even feel favorable towards Jews, but the message from their leaders has always been one of hostility. But the three of them together do not add up to a majority. The Copts are only 10% of the population and are always at odds with the Muslim majority. Religious clashes are becoming more frequent, with churches being bombed and scores ending up dead or injured. Numerically, the intellectuals are but frosting on the cake, and the core Muslim fundamentalists are significant in numbers, some estimate 20%, but still a minority. Corruption and nepotism are rampant and a way of life. You may find that to get a driver's license, you may have to slip the examiner a $50 bill. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that bad drivers are driving around. If you want a good job, who you are and who you know are more important than what you can do. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that incompetent people are frequently in charge of things. All that is not likely to change soon. So how do I personally see the future of Egypt? First, let us answer the earlier question I posed. Is Egypt under a perpetual curse for enslaving the Jews? The prophet Isaiah says, quote, "God said, I will spur Egypt against Egypt, and everyone shall fight against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor. I will give the Egyptians to the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, said the Lord. Their princes are utter fools. The wisest advisers of Pharaoh are a senseless counsel. They shall cry to the Lord because of the oppressors, and he will eventually send them a savior and a defender who will deliver them. After the Lord smites Egypt, Egypt shall return to the Lord, and he will heal them. In that day, God will bless Israel, Egypt, and Assyria, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance." So no, Egypt is not under a perpetual curse. Isaiah tells us that after much punishment and internal infighting, Egypt will eventually see the light and be blessed. But Isaiah does not say when that will happen. But back to the present. It should be plain to all that the army is still in charge, and always has been since 1952. This will not go away. They will continue to be the kingmakers, allowing the people to freely elect civilian presidents as long as these presidents do not stray too far from what they perceive as the good of the country. They will oust any president, elected or not, if the people do not want him, as expressed by mammoth, overwhelming street demonstrations involving millions of people. That is how Mubarak went, that is how Morsi went, and that is how the army intends to keep it. For now, Egyptians feel free to speak their mind after mindlessly cheering whoever was in power for 5,000 years, out of fear. The reason is that for the first time, they do not know which way the wind will blow. In the 2012 presidential election, half voted for the Islamists, and many came to regret it, and half voted for the seculars. So since it is not clear to them which way the country will go, they feel they might as well express their true opinion. As the Egyptians collectively decide their own future, for the first time in their long recorded history, they would do well to remember the promise made to Abraham in his very first encounter with the divine. Quote, "I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you." Unquote. As history has shown repeatedly, that promise will be kept. Whether it's the United States of America in the blessing, or Nazi Germany in the curse, or Spain in the blessing followed by the curse, depending on how they behaved, that promise will be kept. If the Egyptians choose to move in the direction of cursing the Jews, they may well find themselves right where they were before, or lower. Shabbat Shalom.